This is episode 26 of the Florida Sound Archive podcast. I'm Jeff Kaiser. My guest for March 6th, 2022 is known throughout the hip hop community, especially in the Florida, Tampa area. He has been an MC and producer, songwriter for many years. We have on the podcast today, Funkghost. Funkghost, how are you? Welcome on in.
I'm good, man. Hey, thanks for having me. What's up? What's up, world? Let's go.
Pleasure to have you on. So a lot to get to. We'll get things rolling. First and foremost, I have to just comment. It looks like you're in your car. So tell us, what are you sitting in?
I'm sitting in a classic 1994 BMW convertible. It's like my pet, my little baby. I pretty much built it up from scratch. But yeah, man, little pet side project,
So you work on cars on the side?
A little bit.
Okay.
Especially, little classic joints and things of that nature.
Nice. Very cool. So speaking of classic, let's kind of go back a little bit to the early years. Lil Funkghost, going back to, I think you were born in 1972. Is that right?
Yes. 1972, Newport News, Virginia.
Oh, so you were born in Virginia. So what brought you to Florida?
My dad was military. I actually grew up all over the place, man. So we're all from Virginia. My dad's side of the family's from New York, but he was born in Virginia, and then he joined the Air Force in '66. And we lived in Portugal, Boston. Before I came to Florida, to Tampa, I was in Boston. I moved here in the 9th grade in 1986.
So in 1986 is when you moved to Tampa. What was it like growing up in the mid 80s in Tampa? I know it's changed a lot, like many places in Florida over the years.
It was incredible, man. Be honest with you, the hip hop scene was live and pumping way before I got here. Kenny K, rest in peace, the legendary DJ, was the first introduction to Tampa hip hop that I received. When we moved here, we came from Boston, so me and my little brother, we knew all the fresh stations were at the end of the dial. So as soon as we got our room set up or whatever, we took the little radio we had, we went to the end of the dial and we hit on 88.5. And sure enough, it's Kenny K, rocking that fresh stuff. So that's how it started for me here in Bay City. Yes, sir.
Talk about some of your influences. Were you influenced by music that your parents were listening to, or were you influenced by music that you were kind of growing up with, other kids you were going to high school with? Kind of what was that like for you?
Definitely my parents. My dad, he was born in 46, so he was a 70s type guy with the 8 tracks, records, and heavily influenced by what he was playing in the house, Parliament Funkadelic, Commodores, Earth, Wind and Fire, definitely influenced by that. My mother, she was a big Jackie Wilson fan. So she used to play those old 60 records and, James Brown. I grew up listening to that type of stuff in the house. So, I obviously gravitated toward, that funk soul sound of the 70s, early 80s. I was 10 in 82. So that's early 80s sound has always been dear to my heart because it's, just like any other generation, when you're a kid, that music sort of you remember it, it brings back memories, you know what I'm saying? So right. Yeah, definitely my family. And, and then obviously I grew up in the 80s with, Michael Jackson and the emergence of hip hop. So that's always was like, my foundation. Run DMC was the first record I ever bought with my own money. Run DMC Rock Box. It was a 45 with Hard Times on the backside, by the way. But nice. Anyway, that was the first record I bought with my own money. You know what I'm saying? My own Christmas money, so that's where it comes from.
You mentioned funk and Funkghost. Is that where the moniker kind of came from? Was because you were a fan of funk music as well?
Yeah, I used to go by, shout out to Phobia One Tap, when I was in a group called Black Saturday, Tap Ghost and Phobia. I used to go by AL, which was like a synonym of my real name's Alvin. So AL, like for Al, it stood for Admonishing Your Everlasting Life. I spelled it AYEL. and then that morphed into the Funkghost, which it goes back to the funk roots. You know, my mind at 19, 18, whenever I thought of that name, the Funkghost, was just a person that would bring back the old vibes to today's music. That's where the Funkghost comes from.
Was Black Saturday the first formal hip hop group that you formed, or was it something that predated that too?
There was something that predated that. It was me. We come from East Tampa, Progress Village, Bloomingdale, and my high school buddy, Phoebe One, who I was just in the studio with yesterday. We had a group called Chillin' Smooth. I used to be a basketball player, bro. Like, I was an athlete before I got into rapping. Phoebe was already rapping. You know, he already had beat machines and all kind of crazy stuff out in Progress Village. And, you know, I sort of got into it that way at his parents' house. And that was the first incarnation of Black Saturday. It was Chillin' Smooth back in 89.
What position did you play in basketball?
I started out as point guard, but I like to shoot too much. So my coach got smart and the shooting guard.
Yeah, how tall are you?
I'm 6 feet tall.
Okay. Nice. So what's your favorite team? Are you what team are you into?
I'm rocking that brand new Phoenix jersey because I like the colors, but I'm not a Phoenix Suns fan. I'm a diehard Laker fan. I'm from that Magic Johnson era and Larry Bird. You know, I was living in Boston when all that shit was going on, so it was sort of for me up there in Boston, loving the Lakers. You know what I'm saying? And
Absolutely.
Some diehard Celtic fans up there, and but I always loved Magic Johnson. I always loved the Showtime Lakers. Matter of fact, I'm going to catch that. They got a little docu series on HBO. I have to go catch on the Fire Stick. You know what I mean? Yep. So, yeah, Lakers, baby.
It does look pretty good. And considering that you grew up and live in Tampa, Tampa is one of the few Florida cities, like big Florida cities, that doesn't have a basketball team. Like, they have everything else, right? They have football and hockey and baseball, but why not basketball?
I don't know. And I think because when Orlando finally secured the Magic, you know, they were like, you know what? You know, that market has that. I always wanted to have a basketball team here. And I'm old enough and I, you know, was here since 86. I remember we used to have that USBL league, the Florida Tropics basketball team. You know, it was like a minor league team, but, you know, was still happy that we had that in the city. I'm a diehard Bucks fan, diehard Rays, you know, all day. But I would love to have a basketball team here, man, and a Lightning fan. You know, we have a great city. You know, I was riding with the Bucks when they sucked. I was riding with them with their success. So, you know, it is what it is.
And they sucked for a long time.
For a long time.
They really did. Yeah. So speaking of a long time ago, I had read that you were an apprentice for 70s singer Edwin Birdsong, who people may know him nowadays more for a sample in a Daft Punk song. So how did you get linked up with him?
His name is Edwin Birdsong. But anyway, back in 92, when we were in the group Black Saturday, we were performing a lot in the Bay Area, making a lot of noise or whatever in Central Florida. And he came to one of our shows, to be honest with you. He came to one of our shows, and then after the show, he walked up and he was like, "Look, you know, I'm you know, Edwin Birdsong. I've done this and then that." And I'll be honest with you, at that time, at 19 years old, I didn't know. You know, I knew who Roy Ayers was, but I didn't know his impact, you know, and what he did. So he took me under the wing. I worked with him in the studio for about a year. Taught me song arrangement. Taught me, you know, because you know, when you're a kid, you think you know everything. You know what I'm saying? He pretty much broke us down in the studio and really showed us how to actually make a real composition in the studio, you know. And then when we found out, like, oh, you did this, and you know, I'm seeing royalty checks coming from not only this is before Daft Punk. De La Soul sampled him first. His first big check was off of Me, Myself, and I, because they sampled Rapper Dapper Snapper, you know. And yeah, so you know, it was a fortunate, just by chance, connection that God blessed me with. Bless his heart, bless his soul. He's passed away in 2017, but you know, that little brief moment, you know, and him, you know, that tells a lot about a guy like that. His spirit. He was willing to, you know, deal with some nobodies that weren't really known. He just saw something in us, and was like, hey, come on, I can show you, something if you're willing to listen.
Right.
That's simple.
Yep. And thinking about that period, what were some of the clubs, some of the venues that you were getting opportunities to perform at? Any of those still around? And what are some of your memories of some of those places?
A lot of them still around. Some of them aren't the same name, but Janice Landing, we used to kill that out there in Clearwater. Masquerade, I don't know if it's called Masquerade. They're on 7th. It might be called something else, but the one on the corner with the marquee. We used to do a ton of shows there. That was like 7th Ave. We were probably one of the first groups to really perform a lot as far as hip hop in 7th Avenue. There used to be a record store called Blue Chair. Right on 7th. Shout out to Tom Rowe and Edwin. They used to own that record store. And it would be a lot of punk rock bands. It would be a lot of hip hop, cutting edge type underground shit. This is before Ybor got commercialized. But we did a lot of shows at the Blue Chair. I'm an old school 80s cat. There used to be a teen club called Off Limits out here in Brandon. That was very popular. We used to do all kind of stuff there. And shout out to DJ Sandman, Hillsborough Records owner. We did a lot of shows at USF because of him. We're talking like, 91, 90. I met Sandman in 1990. He's 1 year older, so yeah. A lot of stuff, man. Yeah.
And DJ Sandman, he was, and he still is, pretty relevant, right, in the Tampa scene. And when he was DJing at USF, there were a lot of upcoming who became very well known hip hop artists that were asking him to spin their records. So how influential was his radio show, for someone like you who was upcoming at that time?
Sandman was more influential than what you know. Even before that show, I first met him in 1990. He had a dorm room in Beta at USF. I wasn't going to USF. I had a homeboy that was living in one of the dorms, and I was just staying there, working on music, trying to meet people and shit. But anyway, ended up stumbling on Sandman in his dorm room back in like 1990. And the same thing that's going on now was the same thing going on back then. Sandman had a lot of records deep into hip hop. We all used to congregate in his dorm room. A bunch of writers, MCs, beat makers. Same thing that's going on now, we were doing back in the 90s in his dorm room. So, it was just again, another chance meeting of somebody that just, just all in for hip hop. And, same thing to this day, it's sort of crazy.
It is, yeah. And I think around the same time, but keep me honest, you had put out an EP with some other guys, the Crazy Bayshore Stylin' CBS, the Hip Hop Dickheads EP from 95, which awesome underground EP. I'm a huge fan of that record. So can you talk a little bit about making that record and what are your memories of it?
Yes. So Crazy Bayshore Styling comes from my homeboy Idris Farouk. That he's from South Tampa. I actually went to high school with Sandman. When we were in Black Saturday, he used to always come around. He ended up becoming sort of like our hype man on stage or whatever. But he had already had Crazy Bayshore Styling and that idea in his head way before he met us. I met Idris probably like in 1991, 92. And it just sort of like morphed together, and there was a brotherhood between I consider Idris like my big brother and Superstar O, rest in peace. He passed away in 2008, but those were like people we looked up to, you know what I'm saying? And they had like crazy visions. He started that whole hip hop dickhead shit, Crazy Bayshore Styling, and then it morphed into us producing that EP. It was like just a love situation, where it was just like, hey, we all in this together as brothers. Let's just put our minds together and do something fresh and crazy and different. And it's been that way ever since.
Was that the first time that you were producing any songs too?
No, I was producing way that. Yeah, probably the first, because what's funny is, and a lot of people probably don't know this, like as far as my production, when we first started Black Saturday, Tap Ghost and Phobia, we were producing by committee. Like each member wanted to be the producer. You know what I'm saying? So we would have to like bow to each other. Like, okay, we're using this. Okay, Funk, you did that. Okay, Tap, you did that. You know, and we always, you know, we came together. You know how it is. You know, you working in like a committee type lifestyle. You got to sort of like bow to other people's ideas and opinions. I just, you know, over a period of time, I grew into a little bit sharper with that production skill, you know, and that's where that popped off. So I was already producing before the Crazy Bayshore styling venture.
Were you okay?
Part of Crazy Bayshore styling too. He did Niggas Catching Seizures.
Were you producing it all for other artists as well?
Yeah, I mean, no major artists, but a lot of local talent around here. Raheem Samad, Slot Funk Dust, they're like students of mine. You know what I'm saying? Came around me at a very young age, saw what I was doing and took it in their own direction. You know what I'm saying? And the Villains, we got a cool little hip hop scene here, man. That maybe not on the mainstream level, but on that underground hip hop, I think we definitely made a mark around the world as far as that Tampa hip hop sound. You know, they know what time it is. You know, when it comes to Ultra-Boogie and that type of vibe. You know, so it is what it is. It's a blessing. You know.
And we'll definitely talk about Ultra-Boogie in a little bit. You mentioned Raheem Samad, and I really dig his new record. It's nice, and it just happens to be one of my favorite cuts on the record is the Iron Palisades, which is a one that you produced. So talk about that song and the production around it.
Well, the funny thing is, and people don't know, because me and Raheem have been working together a long time. You know, I consider him like my baby Brussel, my baby bro. But I executive produced that record. I designed the album cover for him. We came together as brothers, and we wanted to do a cool project. You know, there's other producers on it, but I pretty much produced the lion's share of it. But as far as the concept, it was just brotherhood. And it was like us looking back, like, oh, we've already done like a bunch of cool stuff. We just need to come together and do something that's what we do, but something different and cool, and a little art put into it, consciousness and just and them throwback beats, man. It gave me an opportunity to go back to my roots, to be honest with you. You know what I'm saying? I always was one of those, I love being around records and finding the cool loops and things of that nature. So that's what that's all about. That's what that Iron Palisades and Nubian Tapestries is all about to me. So
I'm glad you said that it helped you go back to your roots, because some of the stuff that I'm a really big fan of is some of your early, more like the boom bap style hip hop, and some more recent stuff, I dig too, but that original kind of 90s sound, like I just really, with like a new, kind of a new flavor to it. So I really love that you're doing that again.
Well, that's awesome, and I'm glad you like it. When it comes to the music, man, I understand that, there's certain people that like things a certain way. I'm just not one of those that will be stuck in a box ever. I do this for love. I do it for the pure art and creativity. And to do that, you have to expand. You can't be stuck just doing one thing over and over because, a bunch of people like it. I'm a risk taker. You know what I'm saying? I like taking risk, and I'm okay with falling flat on my face from time to time. You know what I'm saying? I sort of fearless when it comes to the music. I like all kind of music, and I want to be able to have the freedom to, if I want to do and explore other kind of music and other kind of art forms. So
right.
That's
Well, I would say it was a pretty big risk when you had your first full length LP, which I have here with me, which.
Ow.
Yeah, there it is right here, which took a long time, was not originally pressed on vinyl. So it took a long time to get Ultra-Boogie Hi-Life on vinyl, which glad that it finally came to light, because it's one of the best underground hip hop records of the 90s, in my opinion. And so can you talk a little bit about, well, firstly, I believe on the record, Melissa Howard, is that her name? On the cover, she was from Real World New Orleans.
Yeah.
that right?
I grew up with Melissa, and we were somewhat dating at that time. She's a little cute chick or whatnot. And I was actually there when she filmed her tape to send in. And I thought it was funny that they, because those shows are all formulatic, or formula. They find the personalities that's going to be combustive, and they put them all together. And she ended up being the bad chick, the one that just wreaked all the havoc, And in real life, she really wasn't like that. I'll be honest with you. I think that was a little bit of, MTV, like, hey, this is how it's got to go, and we're gonna run it. We're gonna run this like this, So, but yeah, I grew up with her. She went to Brandon High School, and during that time, we were kicking it, and she ended up being. She actually helped me put the album cover together, man. She hooked up the photographer, one of her homegirls. She had a nice little house out there in Tampa somewhere. I forgot. This is like 1999, but yeah, man, that is her. That is her.
And I thought the cover in general was very different than a lot of other album covers of that period. It has a very like early mid 80s like R&B soul kind of cover. Is that kind of what you were going for?
No, I was going for Big Daddy Kane's type cover. But yeah. you know how much heat and flack I got for that cover when that album first came out. All these so-called hip hop savants or whatever, geniuses, oh man, that album cover sucks or whatever. Same people that said that back then are coming to me, man, it's one of the dopest album covers I ever seen. So that's how life is, man. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. People perceive things, and that perception can change over time. And I think that cover, the perception of it changed over time. But yeah, I caught a lot of flack for that cover.
When the album came out, did you have any idea at the time like it would eventually become almost like a cult classic in a way? Like what were your thoughts on just from the beginning when it first dropped to the evolution over the last how long has it been, 20 plus years now?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I thought it was going to hit immediately. That was my first impression and wish. Any musician that tells you or any type of artist or anything that they don't care what people think or they don't want people to like it, they're lying. Anybody that puts out art in the world, they want people to receive it in a positive light, at least normal artists, but anyway, I thought it was going to hit immediately. It did do well at first, and then it sort of it tapered off. And did I expect it to have the life it's had? No, that's nothing no one can really expect. And I'm very thankful and grateful that that piece of art of mine that, it resonated with people, all over the world. And it had a slow, gradual, people, over time, they're like, oh, wow, this is something to pay attention to. And that I'm very thankful,
And that happens a lot with movies and music. And sometimes no one gets it at first, or the people that get it are small group. But then as time goes on, people look back and they discover a record like that and are like, wow, like, where's this been my whole life? Like, what a record this is. And you produced the whole album. Is that right?
Pretty much. Slop Funk does, shout out to Slop. He sort of co-piloted Matt Nasso. He helped engineer it. Shout out to Rec One, rest in peace. Milton Surta, he passed away back in the I would say 2004ish, but he produced one of the records called 3 a.m. Deluxe. But for the most part, yeah, from top to bottom, yeah.
It says here on the back, which I'm not sure. I'm assuming this was in Tampa. Pure Tone Audio. Was that a studio in Tampa?
It was a guy named Henry Shao. I don't know where he's at now, but that was the mastering facility. So we actually recorded and mixed that record at my guy Matt Nasso, the Hip Hop Lassos. He had a condo at the time out there in Tampa, and I met him at you remember Mars Music? I'm not sure if you grew up in Tampa, but there used to be like a equipment store called Mars.
Mm-hmm. They were in South Florida too. Yeah, they were kind of popped up in other places.
Yeah, so he was like a person that worked there. And I was coming in there because at that time I was like, you know what, I want to produce and just do my own thing. So I went and bought my own equipment as far as for mixing and whatever. And he's the one that sold that to me. And he came up to me, he's like, and he knew who I was. And he was like, I got my own studio already in the house. Maybe you should come by. Let's see if we can start it here. And the rest is history.
Kind of thinking about some of the gear you had used on that record, even before that, what was some of your earliest gear you had picked up, and anything that you really are into that you've kept that has still works after all these years?
The original gear is the Ensoniq EPS Plus. That's what I was making all the crazy Bayshore styling Black Saturday TGP type beats on, the Ensoniq EPS Plus. That graduated to the ASR. Shout out to Slop. He had acquired a ASR 10, and I already knew how to work the EPS, which is like, it was just like the next level of the ASR 10 was the next level of the EPS Plus. So I sort of taught him how to, get into that, and then eventually, to be honest, I've always worked with MPC 2002 or the MPC 60, which was the original incarnation of the MPC drum machine. That was actually even, it was even before the EPS. So when we were in Black Saturday, remember I told you we were making beats by committee.
Yep.
We got around the MPC 2000. My very first drum machine was a Roland 626. That was the stuff you heard Teddy Riley using back with New Jack Swing,
Right, guy. Yep.
That was the first drum machine I've ever bought for myself. So, but so Roland 626, MPC 60, Ensoniq EPS Plus, ASR 10, and then eventually Ultra-Boogie was made on the MPC 2000.
Did you pick up any instruments while you were learning that side? Guitar, bass, drums? Like, were you ever into that types? No.
No, what's funny is my brothers are. My younger brother Terry, who was born in '76, he's an incredible guitar player, and then my youngest brother James, who I'm 15 years older than, he's a drummer. I've always been an electronic drum machine with records, hip hop records. The science. Kool Herc created hip hop music, DJ Kool Herc, and all it is, the true root of hip hop, is you take a record, you find the coolest part of that record, and you loop that shit over and over again. That's hip hop. That's hip hop production. Yeah. And it's bare root. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So I've always been that element. And there's a part that I left out a little bit about my upbringing. I spent a lot of time in Roosevelt, New York, too, which is it's in Long Island, but it's right by Queens. That's where Public Enemy and they're not from Roosevelt, but they're from like Long Island too. But this is '86, Rakim, all them. So when they were popping off, I was up in that. I was in Roosevelt. Eddie Murphy's actually from Roosevelt, by the way. I went by his house when I was a kid. But anyway, Roosevelt, Long Island played a big part of my hip hop journey. Because I was up there in the '80s when BLS and Hot 97, not the Hot 97 or not Hot 97, it was 95.7 KISS FM. They were the hottest radio station in New York City at the time. And, it was nothing but like all that fresh hip hop stuff. That's the first time I heard Eric B for President, and just lost my mind. And they got basements up there. I don't know if you ever been up in New York or whatever, but
yeah.
It was my great aunt's house in Roosevelt. She had a basement, and my older cousins, they had like a old school beat machine. I think it was a Lindrum, something crazy like that. But they were like a good 3, 4, 5 years older than me. So we down there in the basement listening to Houdini, 5 Minutes of Funk. You know what I'm saying? They're trying to make beats or whatever. I'm just sitting there like, oh, what's this? So that played a huge part, man. You know what I'm saying? Of my evolution.
Yeah.
For sure.
And as the 80s kind of faded out into the 90s, who were some of the 90s artists that kind of helped influence you, or maybe you were listening to when you were really starting to record your own music and produce it?
Absolutely. Of course, the greats, Pete Rock, huge fan of Pete Rock, Q-Tip from Tribe Called Quest, The Bomb Squad, Hank Shockley and the Bomb Squad with Public Enemy, Teddy Riley, and then, I like 80s music. So, D-Train, Leon Silvers, who did all that. I just went to the Whispers concert, by the way. The Whispers were in town. So, Rock Steady and The Beat Goes On. Leon Silvers is the one who produced all those records. So I was really big on him as a kid. And it's funny, everybody thinks Dilla, which don't get me wrong, I'm very influenced by him, but I'm older than Dilla. Dilla was influenced by Q-Tip and Tribe Called Quest. You see what I'm saying? And he took that native tongue vibe to his level. So Q-Tip is one of my, I look at Q-Tip like, God damn, like the stuff he did blew my mind. Like when I was a kid, when I first heard the Instinctive Travels from Tribe Called Quest, their first album, my mind was blown, and then Low End Theory, that's always played a huge De La Soul, that whole native tongue movement.
Yeah.
Played a huge part of my upbringing. DJ Premier, Gangstar, that as well. Daily Operation. We used to play that from top to bottom. You know what I'm saying? Like nonstop. 92. We're talking 92.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. So that type of hip hop is what influenced me.
Who were some artists that you were sharing the stage with that may have been a little bit more national at that time too? Oh man, we rocked with Ice-T a couple of times. We did too many names. We opened up for the De La Soul, Redman, Method Man, Wu-Tang, Boot Camp Click with Buckshot Shorty, Black Moon, Camp Low. It's too many to name, man. I'm telling you. During those times in the 90s, and anybody that was around that sees this interview, they will know. And so Sandman's Devin would know. Yeah, he was with us. We performed with any and everybody that came through the city. You know what I'm saying? So there's probably some I forgot about, man. Sure, I'm sure there's a lot.
They'll be like, "Oh yeah, remember we did that?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, we did that."
Right. Do you have any memories of perhaps one of those artists or groups watching your set and maybe saying anything to you, giving you any advice or anything like that?
Not really advice. We've had a lot of run-ins with cats. I remember we almost had to touch up Redman's homeboys, the DJ Twins. He almost slammed Phobe's hand in the door one time. We almost had to do what we do. And then we have a cool memory with rest in peace, Greg Shock G. Humpty Hump, big influence as well. Glad that this memory came to my head. But we opened up for them one time at the Masquerades, and we're 19 and shit. They already popular and out there and whatnot. And we backstage getting drunk and shit. And my man Phoebe One, he was like, "Man, fuck Shock G, fuck him. We the shit, And he happened to walk in when he was talking that shit, and he was like, "Fuck Shock." You know how Humpty Hump talk. Fuck Shock. Right. And he was like, "Yeah, y'all niggas got to get up out of here, bro." So he kicked us out of the backstage. He still let us rock. Kicked us out of the backstage. We knew him through Kenny, because Kenny was part of Digital Underground. You know what I'm saying? So that's how that little situation popped off. One time, this is a cool story. One time we was opening for De La Soul, right? It was called the Rub then, but I don't know what it's called now, but it's still there on 7. And they had all their equipment set up, right? And they were still like, I guess, at the hotel or whatever. And we were like doing our sound check on their equipment. You know what I'm saying? We were, like all their like the shit they brought in and set up. We was like, they walked in and we was like doing our sound check. It was like, motherfucker, that's our shit, dog. What the hell? Yo, we was on some shit, bro. Word up. We was definitely on. We was on one. You ask anybody around here, we was on one. We learned a lot of hard lessons, though. You know what I'm saying?
And speaking of, I think the Rub was in Ybor, right? Ybor City. Yeah. So
it was by Masquerade.
Yeah.
Now it's called something else.
Yeah, I think it is too. Any memories or stories of perhaps just the surrounding neighborhood? Maybe the people that may have been coming to the show, anything may have happened, anyone get kind of violent or crazy or anything like that go on?
There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of that, buddy. There's a lot of that. I don't want to offend nobody. You know what I'm saying? But you ask around, those stories are floating out there. I've thrown a couple of people off stage. You know what I'm saying? I've done some things I'm not too proud of.
Yeah.
And just so you know, man, shout out to Mike Deluxe, Mike Flam. I don't know if you know about him, but we used to live in Ybor. Like, this is like when Ultra-Boogie came out. We lived on 2nd Ave, so we was living in that whole environment. You know what I'm saying? Like, cats would park their cars at our crib and go party on 7th. You know, so yeah, man, we're entrenched in that whole little scene, and you know, it is what it is. So,
whose idea was it to get Ultra-Boogie on vinyl?
Okay, so how this popped off, it was crazy. You know, 2020 was a crazy year all the way around, you know, dealing with the pandemic and all that. And for whatever reason, I think it got people a little bit more focused on, you know, I guess people have more time on their hands to actually think about shit. So one day I get hit up on Instagram from this guy out of Belgium. And he's like, yo, Ultra-Boogie Hi-Life, you know, one of my favorite records, whatever. I know a guy that has a label out in Belgium that might be interested in pressing up copies on the house. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, obviously to make money off of it. And we'll get into that later. But I was like, okay, hook me up with him. And it ended up being Hip Hop Enterprise, which is a label based out in Belgium. And that's what they do, because there's a contingent overseas, sort of like the jazz era with Miles Davis and them. They see our music different than what people see it in our country. You know, they see the art of it, and they you know, they collect it. There are a lot of collectors out there, and that's what they're based on. So he hit me up. He's like, look, I'll press up a bunch of copies, send you a bunch so you can make some money off of it. But I want to be able to, you know, press it and put it out there, you know? So that's how that popped off. So I signed a distribution deal for Ultra-Boogie with Hip Hop Enterprise. Around the same time, Sandman hits me up. He's like, yo, man, I started a new label and I want you to, you know, at least sign an album, do an album with me. So that's how the Illsboro records popped, all at the same time in 2020 during the pandemic. Now that Hip Hop Enterprise situation, because he's still trying to get like the old Black Saturday shit too. You know what I'm saying? Like he understands what time it is with that type of stuff, you know, and he put that Ultra-Boogie everywhere. Like I tried to sell I still got a few copies of that vinyl, the limited edition, but I tried to put it in places he already had it in Fat Beats, Walmart. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It was already distributed top to bottom, you know, like Barnes and Noble. Like you can order it on Barnes, and you know, I was like, God damn, motherfucker, you should stop, but I can't do nothing. You already done stowed up everything. You see what I'm saying? Like, you know, so lesson learned. You know, it is what it is. But I'm happy that piece of art, people are, it's accessible to people now. You know, so
was when you went into it. So speaking about the money side of things, so was there any monetary success on your end from that output?
Not really. I mean, I made a sneaker money off of it. You know what I'm saying? And I still get like little orders here trickling in every once in a while. But no, nothing like how he probably saw. He probably didn't even see that much either. But he definitely sold a lot of copies.
Yeah. It is interesting you brought up, you know, the fact that label was in Belgium. I've actually sold some pretty rare independent hip hop CDs to people out in Belgium and Germany and out in Europe in general. What is it about that you think when it comes to the European audience? They seem to be a lot more aware and into, not to say they aren't in the States, but I just feel like it's maybe more over there. What is it about the culture over there you think is more into that style of hip hop?
I just think they're a little bit more refined as far as their taste, because, and also in the United States, people get inundated with just, you know, run of the mill stuff on a constant basis. Like, you know, especially this new generation, man, things get old in a week. I talk to some of my nephews and, you know, baby cousins and whatnot, and they be like, oh man, that song came out last month. That's old. You know what I'm saying? So their attention span's a lot shorter here in the United States because, you know, it's just like, it's like a cookie cutter cookie cutter over and over. It just comes out like on a high rate of speed. I think that overseas they might take time to delve into the art more. Like, let me sit down and check this out and let me get my own decision on what I think about this piece of art. Whereas here it's like, the Nas record drops a week ago, and then you're already on to the new Jay-Z joint. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a different type of lifestyle, I guess. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Different type of mind. But it's been like that since the 60s and 50s and 40s. Because the same thing with the jazz. Remember, and I'm a student of this music, man. What's the blues artist that's Rolling Stones? He Muddy Waters.
Muddy Waters.
He wasn't. He didn't really have a bunch of monetary success until when the Rolling Stones popped up. They brought his ass over to England because they were all over his records.
Right.
And the old man, like he's like in his 50s or what, like real talk. That movie Cadillac Records, that's the story of Muddy Waters and Chess Records.
Yep.
But Rolling Stones, and Led Zeppelin, all of them, they recognized and knew, like, yo, this is that black music, that black blues music. It's a start of something, and it morphed them into what they ended up becoming great at. So that's just how life is, man.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's, different cultures, different mindsets. I really can't put my finger on it, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And you being a producer as well, are you also into, more the rock, punk, you mentioned jazz. Are there other genres that you maybe also collecting, or you just kind of look out for in terms of sampling? Like what's that whole thing for you?
Yeah, well, as far as sampling, I'm always, my ear's always open. It doesn't matter what genre. If I find something that I find appealing, I'm going to try to grab it and flip it. But as far as my personal listening, I'm open to all music. Not really big on country music that much, and it's not a knock on it. The closest thing I'll get to country music is like a Commodore's record, like some Lionel Richie that sounded like country, Kenny Rogers, But any other type of music, if I find it to be cool, I'm open to listen to it, and vibe to it, I've always been like that, I like all kind of genres and styles. But if I had to like say, what's my main thing, obviously hip hop, and then early 80s R&B funk. That's my era. That's what I grew up on, that early electronic funk.
Some of my favorite stuff, some of the stuff from like Solar Records and Prelude Records.
Absolutely.
And Sam Records, like all the electronic boogie funk is like
early 80s, baby.
All of it. It can all sound the same. I love it all.
Yeah. It just gives me a vibe and a groove,
Yeah.
Can't help it,
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of groove, one of my favorite producers who I know you also worked with, who was also originally from Tampa, was Self-Titled. What's your relationship with him? How did you meet? Yeah.
Yeah. Glad you brought up the Rubik's Cube. And so Self knew about, Black Saturday Tap Ghost already. We was already performing. And I think I first met Self in 98 at a show in Ybor. And then 2 years later, right after I put out Ultra-Boogie, come to find out he was working at a record label called Bronx Science up in New York. He had moved. He went up to New York and was like an A&R, but, he was basically back there cutting vinyl for him. And then I reached out to him. I was like, yo, I want to, I got to put out a 12-inch, this and that. And he had already had like 12 inches put out, So we went up there. We flew up there and got up with him and the owner at the time. I forgot the owner's name. But Self brought us in the office and was like, yo, this is, Funkghost. He's from Tampa. He's got a cool album out. And he wants to do like a 12-inch record press. So we decided to do SFDP Instructions, which was the lead single, and then Tampa International, the version I produced, and then Self wanted to do a remix of it. And we put that on the backside of it. So that was Self-Titled, put my first 12-inch out, literally.
Yeah. And that's a great track, the Tampa International. Was that done on purpose to kind of give it that title to kind of maybe put Tampa more on the map, or was that just a natural occurrence?
No, absolutely. No. I mean, all of our music from day one always rep Tampa, because that was our environment. And Like you go back and listen to like all the old Black Saturday, Tap Goes, Hip Hop Dickheads, Crazy Bayshore styling. It was all about crazy Bayshore styling, you know, all about putting Tampa in our own light, you know, because, you know, other cities got their own thing, their own vibe. And we were like, why not us, you know? And we never were on no Luke Skywalker shit. You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
you know, disrespect, you know, Juke City, you know, that's a spinoff of Luke Skywalker, you know what I'm saying? In Miami, that Miami sound. And you know, me and my brothers, we was more like, nah, you know, a lot of us transplants anyway, you know what I'm saying? But we want to create our own identity, our own hip hop style and sound, you know? That's what it's always been a part of our music.
Did you ever do any touring, whether throughout Florida or maybe outside the state?
Florida for sure. We've been all around. We've been all around Florida, but yeah, the most touring we did was right around the Ultra-Boogie time. We flew up to Boston a couple of times. We did a show in North Adams. Not really extensive touring. You know, everything's been more like, you know, underground, word of mouth type deal. You know, but as far as like locally and then the whole state of Florida, even like Georgia. You know, yeah, we've been all over it. You know what I'm saying? And doing shows everywhere in this Southeast region, but no, not extensive touring.
Yeah. You think that may have held you back at all from maybe selling more records or perhaps making your fan base greater, just expanding outside of Florida more, or perhaps maybe as, you know, self-titled move to New York, maybe not moving at that, you know, at any point? Did you think that may have had any impact on your career?
I think it had a great impact on my career. Probably should have left, you know, and then it would have also avoided a lot of life situations that became hindrances as well. You know what I'm saying? You know, being caught up in living that life, you know, and being comfortable with you know, with the local success, you know. Yeah, we probably should have been left, you know, but you know, God has his own plan, you know, and he, you know, it is what it is, and we're still alive and kicking. Things are still going, and who knows, man? You know, who knows what is next on the plate? I love to do it regardless of you know, the national attention or whatever. I do it for the pure love, man. You know what I'm saying? And I'll be lying if I said I didn't want to get monetary success from it. Of course. You know, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna do it regardless.
Right. And
what it is.
Yeah. And the most recent full-length album that you had put out was in 2014, I want to say, was Caviar Taste, which was quite the change from Ultra Hi-Life. So talk about that record if you could, you know, and what was it like for you kind of creating that one at that time?
It was just more, it was a crazy time in my life, number one. I waited till I was 41 to have my first kid. So that was the album that came out right around my first child being born. I have two little girls. I have an 8-year-old named Lilani, and I have a 3-year-old named Anastasia. So a lot of life changes, you know. I was trying to balance like I guess a home life with what I am, you know, and that's a whole nother story in itself. But yeah, just wanting to expand, trying to not be, like I said, locked in that box of underground. It's got to always be underground hip hop, because that's not what it is with me. You know, I'm always going to be experimental. I'm always going to, you know, try different flavors and different sounds, because at the end of the day, I enjoy making music, you know. So that was the main thing, just trying to expand a little bit, get out the box. Music was changing around that time. We're talking like, you know, early 2010s. So just, you know, trying to do something that was of to date, of that sound of that day, and still be me while doing it. So that's really what that.
Another Tampa hip hop artist that I'm a fan of that you may have worked with or at some point was Surreal, who was out of Tampa. Any stories or memories of working with him or seeing his career kind of grow?
Sort of like the same thing with Self, man. I've known Surreal and Balance since the probably late 90s. They knew about what we were doing here in Tampa. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think Surreal and them are from like St. Peter or somewhere across the bridge. Not really sure, but I just spoke with Jeremy the other day. He's doing the NFT, art with music type thing. He's always been a real creative brother. I love his spirit, even over music. I love Surreal spirit. He's very encouraging, and his music's dope. But he's just more on just a real down to earth, cool ass vibe. And whenever I talk with him, because I've sent him a lot of my new record, a couple of songs off the new record that I got coming out called Life Is How You Paint It. We'll talk about that a little bit. But yeah, love him to death. But known him for a long time. He's out in LA now doing his thing,
Good deal.
Hey, real quick, man, my phone's about to die because I've been in the car. So I do want to talk a little bit about the new project that's coming
Absolutely.
out. Life Is How You Paint It. It's probably going to be about 23 songs. It's going to be a lot of that underground, and then the same vibe of me doing me. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, I'm a producer and I do what I want to do. You know what I'm saying? Whether people like it or not, I'm going to do what I want to do. You know what I'm saying? Right. And it's going to, as long as I'm happy with me putting forward an attempt to try to do something cool and different. At the end of it, I'm one of the few artists. Every artist wants somebody to like their stuff, but I'm also, I sort of like, I'm used to people like, I don't care if they don't like it or not. You know what I'm saying? Like after a while, I'm like, okay, well, that's your opinion. You know what I'm saying? It's the way it is, man.
Right. I feel you. Yeah, totally feel you on that. I know you said your phone is about to die. So just to kind of close out the interview, people that have been hanging with you since the 90s and all the way through today, anything to kind of close out the interview that you want to say to your fans, say to your anyone that's been a supporter of yours, and kind of anything you want to kind of close out with? I'll let you kind of close out the interview.
Absolutely. It's an honor. And I thank you for all the years of the support, always being there and just giving a ear to my music. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate this interview. It's an honor to speak about, the art and the craft that I like to do. So it's an honor. I really appreciate you reaching out, and just want to say thank you, and keep supporting, and keep on the lookout for Hillsborough Records. We got a lot of cool records coming out here soon, and shout out to all my family and friends, and thank you for the support.